3, 2, 1, action.
Hello and welcome to the Polar Bears. In this series, we're going to be exploring everything media and monetization. In this first episode, I'm joined by one of our first employees, Charlie Matthews.
In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Elliot to find out a bit more about his background and why he decided to start the Polar Bears.
Well, should we introduce each other?
Okay, yeah, go on.
Well, I'm going first,
You
am
go
I?
first, because you're the host.
So this is Charlie Matthews.
Hello.
He was floating around one of our WeWorks on, I think it was a Thursday afternoon. He had a guitar in his hand at the time.
Very lonely.
And he started singing a song. I can't remember what that. Do you remember what that song was?
I think it was I Want to Get Away, that one, by Lenny Kravitz.
Very clever. See what Charlie's done there. He's actually just dropped my favourite karaoke song. Yeah.
See, I remember these things.
Very good.
Yeah,
You're very sharp.
yeah.
That's why we hired you, I think.
Is that why you hired me?
I'm pretty sure we hired you on the basis of your podcast strategy. When we were interviewing brand execs.
Yeah, it was a good podcast strategy.
What was
Look
it?
at where it's got us now.
What
Bear
did
education.
So Bear-education was your podcast strategy. Is that sort of crept into this? Because obviously this is your big day. This is your big moment.
Not at all.
Okay,
This
fine.
is completely like the Icebreaker. So you're going to normally have guests from the industry and you're going to talk to them and uncover hidden gems and share some knowledge. But,
Yeah.
I don't have any hidden gems.
No, I'm quite interested.
Or have any knowledge
if you're the first guest, who's interviewing here? Am I interviewing you?
I'm more interviewing you and then going to discover like who the Polar Bears are,
Okay,
who you are,
fine.
what the point of the Polar Bears is.
So,
Why
I mean,
anyone
you
should
should know
care
that.
about
You
the
are
Polar-
our brand
I mean,
exec.
I know that, but the
Surely you
listeners-
should be answering that. In fact, aren't you dictating the brand strategy?
This is a very good point. But actually, for this episode, we'll make you do it because it's your brand.
Okay, well,
And
go on then.
And then yeah, I mean, should we hit it off with the icebreaker?
Well, I mean, that's the name of the podcast, right? So what is this mysterious icebreaker?
So it is.
Just
the
so we're clear,
icebreaker
if it's anything inappropriate, it's getting cut.
I guarantee it's not inappropriate. Okay, you can open it. Have honours of opening the first ever icebreaker.
This is a really high-res print you've put on this envelope.
Big time. Show it to the camera. Nice.
It looks okay. So, is this a question in here, or what is it? Like,
It's an icebreaker question
Okay.
to lighten the mood a little bit.
this is honestly.
It's on brand and everything.
Oh dear.
We'll get him to sit back on.
Okay, fine. Right, the icebreaker. Could you have been a bit more original, maybe,
No, I
with
think
the
this is a good
icebreaker?
one,
Okay,
especially
fine.
with, it's topical.
If you could be any animal, what animal would you be and why?
Am I going first?
Well, is it me asking you, or
I think
can-
we'll both answer it, but all right, I'll go first.
Okay, go on then.
Think about this. I didn't really think.
Can I just clarify something? Is this because I do have an answer for this, but there's a perception of what animal people think I might be.
A polar bear.
Well, we'll come on to me. Go on,
Okay.
you start.
I think I would if I could be any animal. I would be a monkey.
Any specific
No,
kind?
I don't really know any other kind of monkey.
That's pretty
Just-
broad. That's
just
like
monkey.
saying I'd be a human.
A chimpanzee. They're smart.
Mm.
They're they go on adventures like to space and stuff, and they're quite fun creatures.
So you've not based your animal choice on your own characteristics. You've based it
I
on
think
aspirational
I'm
characteristics.
also quite fun and smart, and I would go to space if they let me. So I think that
Okay.
I think that's me in a nutshell.
Maybe you should tweet Elon, see if you can get an official.
No, he wouldn't do that.
I don't think he would. No. Okay, so you'd be
A monkey.
a monkey, but specifically a chimpanzee.
Yeah. What would you be? Polar bear.
I mean, let's not be basic, but we'll come on to the polar bears. What animal would I be? I would be any kind of bird.
You said I was broad. When I said monkey.
Fine, I'd be a vulture.
Okay. Why? Should just eat things.
I want to be at the top of the food chain.
Would you not rather be like a great white shark?
No, because I also want to be. I think they've got an amazing line. They can all seeing, aren't they? Travel where they want.
Or eagle. They have like really good vision. That's cool.
Oh, that's good.
They can like zoom in.
I know, but this is what animal I'd like to be. Not.
Nah, well, that's not fair.
Okay, what's next? Bored of that question.
That was a good question.
Good icebreaker, though.
It was a good icebreaker. I mean, that's the point of the icebreaker, isn't it? To break the ice. Yeah, okay. So now we'll talk a bit more about you then. All right, so I think one of the things I've always been interested about with you is how you got into the industry from a politics degree. Like, how did that come about?
Well, how does anyone get a job in industry? No one generally studies for what.
Did you want this industry? Is this something you thought you'd be in, or you just sort of fell into it?
Honestly, not. I actually went to Beijing to study finance, and I was actually going to be a trader.
Okay.
And I had an interview at JP Morgan there to be, you know, whatever it was, some sort of, I don't know, wheat trader or something like that.
Sounds riveting.
Hugely, but I was quite into numbers and analytics. I thought that's quite interesting, pays quite well. But I definitely didn't end up in this industry because of that. I came back from there, and I think at the time, my family business was someone in the family business who was running like digital or something. I was always interested in digital. I'd set up like a couple of things at university, but I think my mum asked me and said, "Look, I need you to help out in the family business," and I was quite proud.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that. I want to do my own thing and get my own identity, that sort of stuff. So I said, "All right, I'll do it for a couple of months," and it was like sort of website stuff and, you know, a bit of digital marketing. It was quite interesting. Yeah. And I remember when I'd flown back from wherever in Hong Kong after that interview, and I said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll be back in 6 months." So there was an agreement in place. I said I'd come back and start the sort of the apprenticeship scheme there. But then I didn't leave. I really enjoyed like the advertising side of things. I just liked everything about it. I liked the content side of it. I liked the technical side of it. I liked the analytics side. So yeah, I got stuck into it and then never left.
Wow. I think you spoke to me a bit about the name, where it came from, but like, at what point in the stage of the business did you plan the business model of the polar bears, of like the 2 years training because of the cub? You know, was that quite early on in, you know, the business, or was that like quite deep into it?
So the name definitely came after.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of building a company that was educational, built around training and expertise, curious, inquisitive. The idea that our company could go in and help develop, train and grow people or organizations' revenue so that they could then survive on their own was a concept before the name. Mm-hmm. So I remember, you know, it was my partner, Imogen, who, and I've always been obsessed with animal marketing, obsessed. Mm-hmm. Like I love Evernote, right, which has the elephant, which represents that all-knowing knowledge. Mm-hmm. Like I like Twitter, the birds tweeting. There's loads of examples. Like brands have used animals for years. You know, luxury brands like Ferrari or Polo Ralph Lauren, they've used the prestigious horse. You know, that I've always been obsessed with like the identity an animal can bring into an organization before you even started. Mm-hmm. And so I remember turning to her and saying, "Look, I don't know what to call the company. I thought it was going to be something like really like, I don't know, like one of these like new age indie bands called the Fruit Pastels or something. I thought I'll just call it something like digital or techie." And I was like, "Do you know what? I want to call it an animal." I knew it was going to be an animal. I just didn't know what. And I turned to her and I said, "Look, this is the business concept. It's an in-housing company focused on teaching, education. And the idea is that at the end of that period, they leave us and they feel better off for it. And then there's enough clients in the world that I'll survive." You know, that's not like I'm worried about whether we're going to have enough business. And I remember her turning to me and she said, "Don't like polar bears like train their cubs for 2 years and then they just leave them to survive in the wild on their own?" And I sat there and I was like, "I love you." That was the first time you said it. I mean, to be honest with you, I should have got on one knee there and then. I was like, that is genius. Unbelievable. And it was just then that I was like, okay, the polar bears. And of course, then my brain started going in terms of what the technology should be called, and we spoke about ICE in terms of that intelligence creation engine. And yeah, I just liked the idea of having this binding brand that can stand for a whole load of different things, because at the end of the day, the company has to be its own identity and its own IP to live beyond like my input, right? If you're building a company or you're building any brand, it's got to be bigger than you.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of your career, like, what do you reckon your biggest achievement has been?
What is my biggest achievement? Honestly, that's very, very hard to say, because there are so many highlights and lowlights as well. Like when you coming up and you're working hard and things don't come off, etc. Biggest achievement. Honestly, it's going to sound really cliche, but the fact that we're still here as a business
after
18 months, 24 months, and we're working with some of the most prestigious content creators and media companies like that.
It's like an ongoing achievement.
It has to be. If you forget to remind yourself and like go, do you know what? Actually, you're surviving in a climate that is so turbulent, and agencies are getting fired and people are losing their jobs.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I don't think I could claim that any of my achievements in full-time employment, however big and whatever revenue number they represented, and however big my teams, nothing compares to. You won't realize it until you do it. But honestly, like even your first hire is like, oh wow, like I'm actually paying someone. Like this is real. So yeah, it's not. Look, we're far from there, but I would say like where we are now, just even surviving the 2 years is probably having a podcast. Like who knew? I mean, this is honestly like my worst nightmare. The fact that camera is staring straight at my face, probably focusing on my hairline, which is definitely.
I mean, we're both in the same boat with hairlines. I mean, it's okay. So the next thing I was going to talk about, then you sort of mentioned it a little bit, was like your biggest challenge. I mean, surviving in this climate is probably like a challenge in itself. But what do you reckon, like, one of your biggest challenges as a business owner has been?
So as a business owner, not in
or career, like.
Why you want to do both?
I think do both. Start off with career, and then maybe a bit more just about specific to the business.
Okay. So my biggest challenge in my career is definitely managing different types of people. And I say that with not as a joke or in jest, but every single human being is different and deals with different things in different ways. Like stress levels, some need an arm around a shoulder, some you can't even go near them. The thought of having an arm around a shoulder is like, it doesn't work. And when you're trying to run a team with like a joint agenda and you're trying to really push things forward and create a culture, it becomes incredibly difficult. The bigger the team gets. So yeah, the biggest challenge is always when you have to make tough decisions for the better for the team, right? You've sometimes people don't make it along the way because that isn't easy.
No, I can imagine.
You can't until you have to do it, until you have to sit across the table from someone and say, look, it's not working out. And deep down that is the right decision. It doesn't make it any easier. So definitely I would say in my career, the hardest thing is managing people and those tough decisions you have to make around them.
Is that like same sort of thing for the polar bears then?
Managing people? No, I would say it's a lot easier when you have good people. Million miles away. It is easier. I wouldn't say no. The biggest challenge definitely with the polar bears or starting your own business is definitely something that someone actually advised me before I started the business and said, focus on something very specific. Don't try and do too much.
Yeah, niche down.
And of course I was naive.
Oh.
When we started, this was before your time, right? I always thought the polar bears was a problem-solving company. So it didn't matter what the problem was, we would go and solve that, right, under our model. But it fell very short. And, I made some big mistakes on trying to do every single social platform.
Yeah.
Day one, you know, without any sort of productization, without any knowledge, understanding, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the biggest challenge is just being comfortable in what you know and doubling down on that, and also having the confidence to say no. I've said no to more clients than I've said yes to.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a very fixed agenda of what you're trying to achieve with the company. And it hurts saying no, because obviously when you're starting up, you need that revenue, right? Without that revenue, you can't survive, you know, and we're not funded. So, you know, you take that risk.
Just like a balance. All right, so I think we're going to wrap things up here, guys. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of the Icebreaker podcast. I'm Charlie Matthews. Good night.
Good night.